We're holding now Ois Hey, and till now the Rebbe is bringing Rayas in Rashi, how he's going to learn the Neiros of the Menera and the Uf of the Menera are two separate things. In other words, when the Torah says Miksha, it's not going on the Neiros of the Menera, rather it's going just on the Guf of the Menera. Hey, Nachay Chachef them, what's another proof? In Parshas Pekudei was where that zelt, wie man hat gebracht the Mishkan to Moshe, in Parshas Pekudei when it says how they brought the Mishkan to Moshe. So what does the Torah say? The Torah says there in Perek Lametes, Pasuk Lamed Gimel, it says Es HaMenera HaTahira, the pure Menera, Es Neiros and its candles. So the Rebbe says, so if you're going to learn that the actual candelabra was separated from the Menera, is what Mr. Pasuk tells in the Seder Haba. So it makes sense to say they brought the Menera and then they brought the Neiros. However, if the Neiros were hammered out, part of the Menera, there's no place to say as well gebracht in Menera or Eich the Neiros. It doesn't make sense to say that they brought the Menera and the Neiros. Why? Because bringing the Menera wären b'meila gebracht Eich the Neiros. If you're bringing the Menera, obviously you're bringing the Neiros. Punkt wie es passt nicht zu sagen, als man gebracht die Menera und die Konnen gewiem chuli. Torah doesn't say that they brought the Moshe Rabbeinu, the Menera and the Konnen and the gewiem. Why? Because the branches and the goblets and all these accessories, part of the Menera, were all part of the Menera. There was Miksha in the Menera. So why doesn't the Torah say it? Because it's obvious that if they brought the Menera, they brought everything that's attached to the Menera. So the fact that the Torah says, Es Neiros, must be that the Neiros is separated from the actual Menera. Vav, apia now as like Shitas mi pirushi alatero. So the Neiros nicht lang im Tzivah von Miksha. So now that the Rebbe says, I explained that the Neiros now is not part of the tzivah of that it has to be hammered out. That's very different. For Kamishnu and Gabidon and Tmias in Peter Shtashi and Parshas Vayakel. We'll understand different questions that arise in the explanation of Rashi in Parshas Vayakel. With the Torah that Nocham Ovegin Melachas HaMishkan. As we know, what Parshas? Parshas Terumah Tetzaveh is the command of Melachas HaMishkan. And Vayakel Pekudei is how the Torah is telling us how they actually fulfilled it. So the Rebbe says in Pasuk, if you look in Parshas Vayakel, Pasuk says, Es Meneras HaMe'or, says the Menera, the Me'or, Ve'es Kila, Ve'es Nerisel. So Rashi of Nerisel, so Rashi says in the Mafarish, Rashi says over there, Lutzanish Belaz. It means Lutzanish, which means light. Bazichim, Shashem v'apsilos nesunim b'hem. There was a bowl that oil and the wicks were placed in it. That's Nerisel. The Rebbe says it's nicht verstandig. If the Werte is Nerisel in unsere Parsha, if you look in our Parshas Nerisel, with the Neris and Neris Werte Mont zum ersten Mal, the first time that the Torah mentions the idea of the Neris on the Menera, Rashi says Kimin bezichin. Rashi says it's like a bowl. That they place the oil on the wick. Hein, wie bald Rashi schon in unserer Parsha abgeteilt in Piddish von Neris. Was darf es Rashi noch einmal überchazen in Parshas Vayakel? If Rashi already explained in our Parsha what Neris says, then it was a bowl that they placed the shemen and the psiles. So why in Parshas Vayakel does Rashi say it again? And then it says that Tmiya base, the Tmiya is noch knesser. The question is even more wondrous. Rashi allein sagt in Parshas Vayakel mit etlichen Psukim frier. Rashi says in Parshas Vayakel a few Psukim back, Rashi says over there that I already explained in the Parsha, in other words, in Parshas Terumah, the whole Parsha of the command of the Mishkan. Rashi says I already explained all the details. I don't have to say it again. My time is that Rashi nicht mehr versteht über die Rippe von den Unionen, die nicht wissen, was am Mishkan. That's a Rashi over there in Parshas Vayakel of Pekudei. If you notice, there's very, very short Rashis. Why? Because it's basically a repetition. And Rashi says everything I already explained. Aside in the involvement, dort kommt zu a Chiddush, was wir können nicht wissen von Mokum Zavesam, unless there's a Chiddush that we will not learn out. It's not explained in the Parsha of Terumah. because he relies on what he already explained. So now, turn over the page 326. Hein, if Rashi already told us what Neris means in the parsha of the command, why does he chazer again the Piddush? Gimel. Why does Rashi tell us, you know what Neres means? It means lutzanish, which in French means, in Old French means light.
Latin.
Yeah, it's
Luz as the light.
All right, but the Laz means, whenever Rashi says Laz, it's French, yeah.
I'm saying it's French is a Latin.
Right, okay. L'cheira, the Rebbe says, the Rebbe says, either way you look at it is a question. If the Piddush Bezichen is nicht maspik, und es fordert sich mit wissen dem Laz. So if the word Bezichen is not self-understood, so Rashi has to tell us what it means. It means Bezich, it means Lutzanish. Hat doch Rashi gedacht, es bringen dort, wo sagt dem Piddush von Neres, zum ersten Mal in unser Parsha. So the first time you explain Neres, and Rashi says Bezichen, but I don't know what that means. So therefore, Rashi tells me Lutzanish Belaz, so tell it to me the first time. Why are you saying it only in Parshas Vayakel? And if you don't have to explain it, because Rashi is telling you that Bezichen is self-understood, and therefore I don't have to explain what Bezichen means. So why does he have to add the Old French? These are questions that nobody asks. But the Rebbe, every word was Rashi was medayik. Rashi says, so the Rebbe says, why if I don't know what Bezichen means, and Rashi tells me it means Lutzanish Belaz, so say it in Parshas Terumah the first time. Why? And if not, why are you saying it in our Parsha? So we have three questions. Question number one is, if Rashi already says that what Neir says, why does he say it again in Parshas Vayakel? Rashi tells us already that whenever it's like a repetition, Rashi's already told us that he relies on what you know in our Parsha. Why does, in Parshas Vayakel, he add the word Lutznish Belaz in Manushach, either add it here or don't say it at all. Zayin. But we must verstehen, back to Nochadik and dem Piddush Rashi, we'll understand this by first prefacing another nuance in Rashi. Ubehektim. We already explained that every single word in Rashi is so exact. When as das is nicht nur beneged die Wörter von Guma Piddush. Euch die Wörter was is matik from the pasuk in the Ramaskal and the not only the words that Rashi uses, but even when he quotes the Dibra Hamaskal from the pasuk, that's very, very exact. The Rebbe says, "Eine von the Erter, wo man zet es is boiled dicken Eufen, when we do sees a Dibra Hamaskal with Piddush Rashi is in the Rebbe the month of Piddush Rashi." So if you want to pick an example of something which is so exact, let's focus on the above mentioned Rashi. In pasuk Anal, it's the pasuk that was quoted, "Ves mneres amin ves kila ves neres Hashem namer." Shtayb Rashi drei bazudre dibra maskul. So Rashi says first, Eskela means Malkachayim Machtis, means the tongues and the shovels. Neidesel, what does Neidesel mean? Elutzadish Pchuli. And Es Shem Namer, Alfu Tzorchei Tzorchach Milev Pchuli. So Rashi quotes the words of Shem Namer, and he says even that needs Chach Milev. The Rebbe says, Zed Nashime Belet, you see something very, very, you see something like a change. In dem ersten und letzten Dibra Maskels, Rashi Madik von Posif auf dem Wort Ves. In the first Dibra Maskel and the last Dibra Maskel, Rashi quotes the words Ves. Da hängen in the zweiten Dibra Maskels, Matik nor dem Wort Nerisel, and nicht dem Wort Ves. So be consistent. If the Pasuk says Ves Nerisel, Ves Kilo, Ves Nerisel, Ves Shem Namor, and Rashi is explaining each one differently, so how come the second one, Nerisel, you don't say S? The Rebbe says, Al Pianal, as late Pirish Rashi is on the Neris, need given a cloud for mixture. But now the Rebbe says, now that I just explained, well, according to Pirish Rashi, the Neris were not part of the mixture, was not part of the hammered out of the Neris movement, it's understood. Since according to his opinion, the Neris were not part of the Menera, the actual, the mixture of the Menera, Darfin Zog is, if the says, when the Pasuk Zog, Kika Yasa Oiso, it's called Hakela Maela, when the Torah says to make the Menera from the Kikar and the Kalim, Sein die Neres nicht in Oisa die Menera. They're in Kelim, to call a Kelim Meila. So you must say that the Neres are not part of the actual Oisa, the Menera. Rather, it's part of the Kelim. Neres are from the Kliyam Menera. So it could be from the kicker, but it's not part of the mixture of the Menera. Shas min kommt aber zu Parshas Vayakov, wo der Posuk sagt, was Menera ist am was Kela, was Neres ist, wer der Fies ist schwer. So, 1 second. When you come to Parshas Vayakov, the Torah says, as Menera ist am as Kela, was Neres ist. So the question is, we bald the station Vaskila was his Kela Oich the Neres. The Torah already said Vaskila, which is included in the Neres. Vas Neres Bazunder. So if Kela means Neres, so why does the Torah in Parshas Vayakov say it's Neres? So therefore Rashi says, because of the Kedei does to Fa'enfrin, Shaltach Rashi Vaskila and is Rafash Malkachaim Marthas. So therefore Rashi says, Vaskila means the shovels and the tongues. Und gleich danach is matik from Pasuk Neresel, or is dabei mashmit the word v'es, and then he quotes the words Neresel, but he excludes, he deletes the word v'es, with the kavanah zu madvus an damit, because he wants to stress, as man darf lernen den Pasuk Yu, wie es folgt, far Neresel, nicht gestanden word v'es, because you have to read the Pasuk without the word v'es. While Neresel says, ich hab prat von v'eskela. Why? Because Neresel is a detail in eskela. That says, der Pirush von Pasuk is, how do you read the Pasuk? Veskilo was in the Makalchayim Machtus Neresel. So the Rebbe says very exact. Why does Rashi not quote the word Es Neresel? Because Neresel is not part of the Menera. So why not say, why? So you say Veskilo and not Neresel? Because the question is, if Kelel means the separate things, like Rashi says Makalchayim Machtus, so Neres is part of that as well. It's also the Kelim. So therefore, the Rebbe says, that's why Rashi does not quote the word es to tell me that it's a hamshach. No, it's kelel, malkachayim machlis, and the neresel. Tess, spleit doch aber nicht verstanden, für was darf der Posuk Tako is teilen, neresel von zwischen den kliyam nera. So now the question is, you explained beautifully that neresel is like part of the kelel, but why does the Torah B'chlal say neresel? The Rebbe says, if them zok Rashi, therefore Rashi says, lutzenish balaz. As Rashi says, it means lutzenish. Now, we asked, why does Rashi have to tell us what bazichin vesnerisel means? Meit lichtig. So what does lutzenish mean? Was the shadish from the word belaz meit lichtig. Lutzenish means light. But the tafra was the nearest word angerufen al shema ur. And why does the nearest? Why is candles called on the name ur, light? And we Rashi's mamshich bazichin Hashem v'apsilas nasun bahem. Das heißt, because the Neres, when you call it or, it expresses what the essence, what the essential part of the Menera is. So Shafin Lichtigkeit. What was the point of the Menera? To create light. Was werden geschaffen von das, was is in the Neres Hashem Rapsilas the Son. Because what was the purpose? The purpose of the Menera was to shine light through the Shemen and the Psilas that were placed in it. So that's why we call it Lutzenish Balas, to tell us that the purpose of the Menera is to give light. We balas the Neres sein der Iker von der ganzen Menera. So since the Neres are the primary part of the Menera, is verstanden for was der Pasuk tells the Ois Bazunder for the andere Kliyam Menera. Now I can understand why the Torah separates it to tell us that even though it's part of the Kelah, but it also deserves its own category because the main part of the Menera is the Neres. So basically what we explained is that according to Rashi, the Neres and the Menera are two separate entities, not like the Rambam, Tradition Mikra, and the Rebbe brought in Rashi a few proofs why you have to say that. And then the Rebbe concluded that the reason why he touches up Lutzenish and Parshas Vayakil is to tell us that the primary purpose of the Menera is the Lutzenish, is the Lichtigkeit, to make light in the world.